I had a free weekend in June and decided to attempt a lesser known canoe route. I headed to MyCCR. It's my go-to site for looking up information for canoe routes in Canada. Seriously, if you are into paddling and haven't checked out the site, there is a wealth of information. Trip logs, route suggestions, and it's really just an amazing community. I'll leave a link in the description, and if you're interested, you can check it out. Anyway, I found a route that looks absolutely perfect. It was remote, it was the perfect length, and most enticing of all, someone actually commented, Stormy Lake and Wapageisi Lake are both awesome. Well, now my curiosity for these remote lakes was piqued, and I knew I had to go. Now, with very limited information about the specifics of the route, I eventually got to the launch and put in my canoe through a literal swarm of thousands of mosquitoes at Snake Bay. The paddle down Snake Bay was really interesting. The water levels were at a record high, so the shoreline wasn't as defined as usual. The normal rocky shorelines dividing the deep green forest and the viridescent lake were swallowed up by the high water. As I canoed in, there wasn't long before the waterway opened up and showed off some of the 50 to 60 high foot cliffs along the shoreline, standing there like gargantuan sentries watching me in silence as I paddled by. I was fortunate enough to have a slight tailwind, which always makes paddling a lot more relaxing. As Snake Bay eventually merged into Stormy Lake, I turned south and found a spot on the sunny shoreline to cook up a quick lunch and enjoy the perfect afternoon. I'd really love to take more time to explore Stormy Lake another time. My route this time took me on a fairly direct pass through the west shore, so I didn't really get to see much of the central or the eastern part of the lake, and they looked pretty cool. Now, just before I got to the south end of the lake, I went past 3 twin islands. I saw a rough campsite clearing on one of the islands, and it made me wonder if there would have been more on the other 3. Anyway, I was on a bit of a clock and I had to keep moving, so I continued to the south end of Stormy Lake in search of the first portage. Now, I eventually found it, and although it was a little rough, it was definitely passable. I put in at the first of 2 unnamed lakes between Stormy and Wapageisi. As the cloying drone of mosquitoes faded away as I paddled away from the portage, the sound of my paddle slipping in and out of the water and the canoe gently sliding along the surface brought me back into that state of tranquility. Or at least for a few minutes. I only had a short paddle through the lake before I reached the opposite shore in search of the next portage. This is about where the trip took a bit of a turn for the worse. It took me the better part of 2 hours to find the portage. I scoured the south shore, and I'm confident I found what used to be the portage, though it certainly was not passable. I spent a few hours doing my best to clear out some of the small and medium-sized deadfall and hacking down some of the alders that had grown over the path. I got about half the trail cleared before I decided to turn back. As much as I hate leaving a job like this unfinished, the sun had started to dip low in the horizon, and the swarms of mosquitoes were getting unbearable, so it was time to go make camp. I cleared a little area large enough for my tent on a reasonably flat patch of land that I found next to a beaver dam. So the next morning, did the breakfast in the canoe again to avoid the mosquitoes, and I am just finishing my coffee. The next day I ended up heading back on a fairly straight path on another gorgeous sunny day. And the gods of the lake must have really been smiling on me because I was fortunate enough to have the wind at my back for most of the paddle on my return as well. Even though I only saw about half of what I set out to do, I saw enough to know that I really want to come back another time. Rarely explored lakes like this are really interesting to me, and I'd love to come back with the proper equipment and time to restore this route to what must have been its former glory. It was a difficult few days, but I feel fortunate to have explored a very rare part of the Ontario lake system, and I feel just a little bit more connected with this amazing planet that we all call home. It's a beautiful world we live in. Get outdoors and enjoy it.